What's up guys, it's James Allen, the Out-of-State Investor, and this summer has been insane for the housing market. I'm talking about lowest inventory of all time, record-breaking price growth, and bidding wars that are almost impossible to win. So with that said, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why you should not be buying a house in today's market. But before I break all that down, do me a favor and support the channel by smashing that like button. And in addition to that, if it's your first time visiting the channel, I buy rental properties and flip houses both in and out of my state, and I teach you guys how you can build massive wealth yourself doing the same thing, along with how to improve your personal financial situation. So if any of that sounds interesting, definitely subscribe, hit that notification bell, and with that said, let's jump into it. So like I mentioned, the housing market is insane right now, and with these all-time low interest rates, it can be very tempting to want to buy. But with that said, it's not always the wisest choice to buy a house, especially depending on your situation. So with that said, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you should not be buying a house in today's market. The first reason you really don't want to be buying a house in today's market is if you don't plan on living in the house for a long period of time. If you're only going to be there for a short time, you're going to be killed by these transaction costs and closing costs that you have to pay on the buying side and the selling side. You see, when you buy a house, you actually spend 2 to 2.5% of the purchase price in closing costs alone. And it gets even worse when you sell the house because you end up spending 6 to 7% in closing costs on the sell side. So let's say you got a house for $400,000 and it went up in value to $430,000 in just 1 year. Well, then you'd think that you made $30,000 in profit, right? Well, the reality is you probably spent about $8,000 in closing costs just to buy the house, and then another $30,000 to sell the house. So when you put it all together, and even if you account for the equity that you built in that 1 year of ownership, you actually end up losing a few $1,000s out of your pocket. So if you have to gain $30,000 in equity just to lose a few $1,000s, or maybe at best break even, then you can only imagine how bad of a position you'd be in if the market corrected or even crashed. So this is the reason why you really don't want to be buying in this stage of the market if you're not prepared for the worst case scenario and holding on to the property for the long run. The number 2 reason is FOMO. You don't want to be buying a house if you're buying for the fear of missing out. The reality is 64% of millennials and 43% of all homeowners actually have serious regrets about their latest home purchase, so you don't want to be rushing any kind of decision like this. In fact, right now what we're seeing is more and more inventory coming onto the market each month, which means that for a buyer, you're going to have so much more selection, so you don't have to rush the process. You don't have to buy a home that doesn't fit your needs. Take your time, get what works for your family. Reason number 3 is going over budget. You should not, under any circumstance, put yourself in a situation where you're going over budget. Now, for me, what I recommend, the very top you should be doing is no more than 30% of your income going towards your housing payment, and that means your mortgage payment, your taxes, and your insurance. Now, personally, a really safe place to be, and this is actually a rule of thumb I use for myself, is to spend no more than 25% of my income on all my housing expenses. So that means mortgage, taxes, insurance, that means lawn maintenance, that means pool maintenance, that means utilities, whatever your house has, any household costs that you're going to incur as part of being a homeowner. Reason number 4 why you should not buy a house in this market is if you have no reserves. If you have no money left over after you buy the house, you are in a very dangerous position at this point. You're just one HVAC going out or one roof needing replacing to being put in a really bad position. Not to mention that you really want to have money set aside for maybe if you have a pay decrease or a job loss, or maybe even something else happens with your marriage and you get a divorce, God forbid. But at the end of the day, what I recommend you do is have at least 3 months reserves. That's the minimum you should have just to protect yourself from the worst case scenario happening. And reason number 5, last but not least, is having a bad credit score or even really big debts. And the reason this is important is it can severely affect your ability to buy the house in the first place, or even lower the kind of quality of house that you might be going for. Now, as far as credit score is concerned, a 740 is considered the best, where you're going to get the best rates and closing costs. So that's really the marker you want to shoot for. And then every 20 points down from there, it starts to get worse and worse as far as higher interest rates, rates, a more expensive closing cost. So between 720 to 739, that's going to be a little more expensive than over 740. Between 700 and 719, that's going to be the next area, and so on and so on. Now, if your credit score is so low that you're even below like the 620 mark, say, you may not even qualify for a conventional loan at all, and you may only be looking at an FHA loan. Now, the reason I bring this up is FHA loans in this stage of the market are just not going to be able to compete. You may get that one property that nobody else wants, but in reality, if you're in a multiple offer situation, which so many people are in that situation right now, you're just not going to compete with an FHA loan because there's so much more restrictions that you have to go through compared to a conventional loan. So if you're a seller and you see that, you are going to choose between a conventional loan, which has less restrictions, and an FHA loan that has more restrictions. Well, the answer, of course, is you're going to choose the conventional loan, not to mention the cash buyers that are also lining up as well. So you could see that in a competitive market, you need to come to the bidding war with as best of an offer as possible. So if you're in the FHA realm, you may want to raise that credit score, qualify for that conventional loan so you can compete on a higher level. Now, when I talk about big debts, what I'm referring to is things that can affect your DTI, which stands for debt to income ratio, okay? This is basically measuring the amount of debt you have versus the amount of income you have. And most lenders will give you anywhere between 43% to 50% of your income to be used for debt. So if you already have so much percentage of your income used for debt, you don't have much left over to give to a new house that you're about to purchase. So for instance, if you had 20% of your income going towards a luxury car and another 10% going towards student loans, the reality is you only have anywhere from 13 to 20% left over for your house purchase. And this can drastically affect the quality and the kind of house that you can actually afford and qualify for. So if you're really focused on trying to buy that nice house for your family, then you really got to start with planning ahead, setting yourself up so that you can qualify for as much as you possibly can. And that could mean even paying down your car balance all the way down to zero, maybe paying off your student debt, whatever you can do to free up that space so that not only can you afford it, but you'll qualify in the lender's eyes as well. And the reason why I mentioned this brings me back to reason number one, which is that you really don't want to be buying a house at this stage in the market if you're not willing to live in it for at least 7 to 10 years or at least hold on to it for that long. So with that said, these are the 5 reasons why you really shouldn't be buying a house in this stage of the market. It's a crazy market right now, and it's not for everybody, that's for sure. So be careful out there. If you're going to buy a house, do not go crazy with your offers. Do not be waiving inspection contingencies and crazy stuff like that. Play it safe, protect yourself for the long run, and plan on being in this house, worst case scenario, for at least 7 to 10 years or worst 5 to 10 years so that you have a little room to breathe. So with that said, if you enjoyed today's video or you gained some value from it, do me a favor and smash that like button. And in addition to that, if you haven't already done so, definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell for more videos like this. Also, comment down below. Let me know what you're doing right now. Are you waiting for the market to correct before you buy a house? Are you trying to buy right now and take advantage of these low interest rates? I want to know about it. Tell me down below in the comments. Lastly, check out my Instagram and my TikTok channel that I just started. My plan is to provide daily videos, to provide extra content outside of my YouTube videos so that you guys get daily content on those social media platforms. So if you're interested in checking me out there, just look up The Out-of-State Investor and you should be able to find me there no problem. So anyways, with that said, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.